All right, now I'd like to introduce our moderator for tonight's conversation. Lisa Dailey is an avid traveler and writer. She's the owner of Silent Sidekick and Sidekick Press, where she helps guide authors through their publishing journey. Her memoir, Square Up, 50,000 Miles in Search of a Way Home, was released in March. And our featured author, Lorinda Boyer, is a Pacific Northwest native living in Tucson, Arizona. She spends her days writing, reading, and exploring the desert with her wife, Sandy, and their dog, Molly. We're here tonight to celebrate her new memoir, Straight Enough. Please welcome Lisa Dailey and Lorinda Boyer.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you.
Hi, Lorinda.
Hi there.
It's so good to see you again. I had so much fun at your launch on Thursday night. And just so everyone out there knows our relationship, I met Lorinda several years ago, I guess now, in the Narrative Project, and we were placed together as writing partners, beta buddies, and so we got to read each other's books over and over and over and over again. And your book for sure went through so many different iterations in those last 4 years. I'm amazed at all the different transformations that you've done to it. So you probably wrote a whole lot more than ended up in the book.
Indeed.
How did you decide what stayed in and what got cut?
Well, I think that the process got easier the longer I was writing the book. In the beginning, I just wrote everything I remembered, everything I felt needed to be included in somewhat of a chronological order. As the process in the Narrative Project went on, and I learned more about the importance of a story arc and the flow of the story, I learned that not every single thing that happened was going to necessarily be interesting to my audience. No one wants to read my moment by moment diary. What they want is a story that flows well, has a clear beginning, middle, and end. So it wasn't an automatic thing, and it certainly didn't happen quickly. It was a process. And some of those that were taken out of the book went with a few tears of mine. Others went quite easily, and but definitely a process. It was a slow process.
Right. Cami always says life doesn't happen in a narrative arc, but a book has to. So she really drills that into our heads in the program. So I think that on Thursday, you started your talk with a little bit from the book that had been cut. Do you want to do a quick reading for us from that?
Sure. So
Okay.
I chose this piece that was not included in the actual memoir to start off with, because I think it sets the scene for what the memoir really is about and how it got started and why I felt the way I did. I believe that indoctrination is something that just it is the reason why I ended up on the path that I did. And I wanted the people I'm speaking to understand and know where I was coming from. So this piece was not in the memoir. It's me at a younger age, and I'm explaining, I think, how things occurred. So anyways, I'm just gonna go right with it. All right, here we go. I rolled burrito style in my burnt orange and yellow bedspread, leaving only a tiny hole for air. Mom had already tucked me in and said bedtime prayers with me, but I had a secret. So after she kissed me on the cheek and quietly shut the door halfway, I prayed the prayers I could not in front of her. Please forgive me for stealing Sherry Ann Williams' fuzzy pencil. I pressed the backs of my hands against my eyes and swallowed hard. I knew better than to take something that was not mine. When it rolled off her desk in school and landed next to my shoe, I picked it up. I hadn't planned to keep it. I only wanted to hold it, to rub my fingers up and down the soft, fuzzy felt. But when Sherry Ann threw her arms up in the air and shrieked, "Who stole my pencil?" and the teacher asked everyone to look around their desks to see if it had fallen, I went mute and shoved it in the pocket of my sweater. Now curled tightly in my protective cocoon of blankets, I pleaded with God's Son, please, Jesus, please forgive me. I was positive I could feel vibrations coming from the top drawer of my white nightstand, the one that matched my white princess vanity, where the black leather-bound King James Bible was kept. Thou shalt not steal. The words rumbled through my body and shook my tender soul. I could recite all 10 commandments along with the Lord's Prayer, and I absorbed the literal translation of these verses. I believed God was strong and mighty, and I was terrified of him. Sure, he loved the little children when they behaved, but sin was not something God could tolerate because in his very nature, he was perfect. I could only reason that if I sinned, he would not look upon me. I was not safe, nor was anyone I loved. I was not new to prayers and confession. At 5, I had repeated along with my Sunday school teacher and the entire class, the prayer of salvation. I asked Jesus to forgive me all of my sins and to come into my heart and save me from spending eternity in hell. Even still, I was often dismayed to find that he didn't step in to protect me the way I had expected he would. Knowing that God was never wrong, I could only conclude that it was I who was unworthy of his protection. At first, I believed my uncle pulling me close, positioning me on his knee, was a sign of affection. Always eager to please the grown-ups in my life, I ran to him when he called me by my pet name, George. I hated that name. George was a boy's name, but my uncle thought he was being funny, and I didn't want to upset him. Grandma and Grandpa's house, or rather their single-wide mobile home, was our family hub. My aunts, uncles, and cousins all gathered into the confined quarters routinely to visit. We were so crowded that the physical closeness only created a cramped anonymity that allowed me to be in unseen contact with the probing of my uncle's fingers. And it wasn't until I caught a glance of my perpetrator's leering expression or heard him whisper, "Don't tell anyone, George, or bad things will happen," that a darkness fell, and I knew that what we were involved in was shady. This was the evil spirit that would not let me go. No matter how I prayed, how I begged God to protect me, every time I saw my uncle, I was helpless. And even though no one said as much, I knew this was the darker reason for the wedge between Jesus and me. This was the cross I took up, and I knew I'd fallen out of favor with God, and he had turned on me.
Wow. So as you go through the book and through your life, I imagine that you tried and strove to do right by the eyes of God and in the church and your parents and everyone else. So at any point in there, did you feel that perhaps the lessons that you were being taught were not a good fit for you? Or that somehow you didn't belong there?
Yes. So in the beginning, my faith, which I grew to see it as my faith as well, was something that never changed. I had been taught that Jesus never changed, that God never changed, that my religion never changed, that it was the one thing in my life I could count on no matter what. The problems began to arise when I realized that though my religion and my God never changed, I did. So as I grew as a person and I became more aware of the world around me, I had questions and my religion wasn't keeping up with them. And so I began to feel uncomfortable and realize that I was outgrowing or growing outside of the parameters of what I'd been taught.
Mm-hmm. And so as we hit sort of the first big scenes of the book, you meet someone who maybe changes your mind about how you're feeling it within in terms of that religion in your life. How did that, tell us a little bit about that?
So I went about becoming a Christian wife and mother in the only way I knew how, which was 10 days after I graduated high school, I got married. I had all my plans were to get married, to have children, to take them to church, I had it all laid out. I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to I wanted to please my God. I wanted to please my family. I wanted to please everyone around me. So that's what I did. I got married. I had Bible study. I went to church every Sunday. And then when I had children, I took them to a Christian school. I did all the things. And then one day, I met a woman who sparked something in me that I had never felt before. I had accepted the fact that any ideas of romantic love or falling in love with anyone or feeling connected with someone was all a Hollywood fantasy, and that being faithful to God, being faithful to my husband, being faithful to my religion, that was the way to go, whether or not I was happy with it or had any sort of joy in that at all. So I met a woman and I had some feelings for her, and then the stuff hit the fan.
So you have a passage about your meeting with this person. Do you want to read that second passage there?
Sure. So this is my job at the library where I met this woman. There's a little background on it about kind of explaining why I was so surprised by her, by who she was. So, the only gay person I've ever known is my cousin by marriage, Tommy. When he was 14 and I was 12, his dad married my first cousin. I liked him right away. He was polite, nice to me, and Mom said he was a good Christian boy. We ran into one another over the years at family reunions and picnics. And then in 1990, the year I married Chet, I learned via the family grapevine that Tommy was gay. I was stunned, but his parents, especially his father, was outraged. There was a falling out of which I heard varying versions of, and in the end, Tommy moved to San Francisco. But he may as well have dropped smack into the heart of Sodom and Gomorrah, for everyone fretted over his soul and prayed for his salvation. I ruminate on these thoughts as I peer through the bookshelf, trying to get a better look at the new hire. I check out her spiky coffee and cream-colored hair, her khaki shorts, and unlaced gray high tops. She isn't fat exactly, but rather solid, sturdy, maybe somewhat masculine, the way I imagine lesbians look. But when she turns to the side and I catch a look at her profile, the way she fills out her t-shirt, there's no mistaking she's female. She spins her head in my direction and I duck out of view. A few minutes later, she rounds the stacks with my manager. Lorinda, this is Robin. Robin thrusts her hand out and squeezes mine. Howdy. Her lips turn up in a half smile. We stand so close, I can smell her spearmint chewing gum. I can count the number of freckles dotting her nose. Suddenly, I feel dizzy. My mouth is moving in reply, but my words are drowned by the deafening sound of fireworks exploding in my ears. Robin continues to smile, continues to hold my hand. If I were the slightest bit self-aware, I'd recognize love at first sight. But in this moment, all I know for sure is how at home my hand feels in hers, that I want to be much closer to her, to be enveloped by her. Then the manager is escorting her away to meet the other employees, and the spell is broken.
That's great, Linda. So as you develop this relationship with Robin, and first a very friendly relationship and then a more romantic relationship, did you feel you were beginning to step into your more authentic self, or were you really afraid of how you were feeling?
The beginning was only fair because my specific, I don't want to say all because I don't know about all, although I might have my own theories. My religion was very much in my mind a fear-based religion. Fear is what drove the whole thing. So when I met her and I had those feelings for her, I had no problem pushing them down in the beginning because I had no capacity to even entertain them. There was nothing inside of me that would have allowed that sort of thing to even be a possibility. The relationship as it developed over time is what really caused the turmoil. And in the middle of the book, not quite the middle, there's a big, huge event that happens that's super exciting. And I don't want to ruin it for everyone, so I'm not going to tell you about it. You have to read the book. But it's the result of that experience that led me to realize my feelings for Robin. And then through that, and it's quite a journey, I do start to realize that when I'm with her, that is the most authentic I've ever felt. I don't recognize that as authenticity for quite a while. Because if I did, it would be a really short story and not very fun to read. But instead, it's painstakingly long. And after a while, you want to just slap me upside the head and say, for real, girl, get it. But it takes a while.
Did anyone else in your life suspect that maybe you were unhappy or torn between, doing what everyone else thought was right and what you really felt was your authentic self?
I'm a really good actress. Just throwing it out there. But there were always a few questions, and like all of us, once something comes out, when something comes to the surface, the people who are closest to you are saying things like, "Oh, that makes sense now," or they're saying, "Oh, yeah." At the time, I didn't feel anyone was that perceptive of me. I felt I was pretty undercover. I admitted how I felt to a couple of my closest friends, and I can say quite honestly that they accepted it and encouraged me. If it hadn't been for that, it could have even been harder. But my two closest friends at the time, and they're still my closest friends, really just accepted that in and said, they didn't act like, oh my God, is that really happening? They just said, okay. And in fact, one of them said, well, you know what? If you told me you loved a rock, I'd think it was a little weird, but I'd be like, well, she loves a rock and I love her. So that's good.
That's great. But that took a long time to come out. So I can imagine that pull, nearly tearing you in two. How did that end up manifesting itself in your life?
Well, there were signs all along the way. I struggled with a lot of different things, but eventually what happened was I acted out in sexual aggression, in sexual addiction. So I was just taking my anger out on any guy who came within, poor men, like within this, it could have been anything. I was taking it out on men. I had a lot of just anger, and I really wanted to take it out on someone, and the entire male race was who I decided to target. So sorry for that. Sometimes I think though, when you say sexual addiction, people think things that aren't quite how it happened for me. I think everyone's experience is different, but I would also like to say that I think that most people experience sexual addiction more the way I did and less the way we've made it to sound. I think it sounds as if, oh, you're just running around having sex with all these people. No, it was an anger thing. It was a way to control, find some control in my life. I thought I was controlling them. What really happened was it made me the most out of control I'd ever been, because now I was involving other people. And once you start to involve other people and you don't have control over what they say or what they do or what happens, life becomes a lot more complicated. So instead of resolving issues, it only created more.
Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna have you do another reading from the other night, but I wanted to remind people that if you have any questions, to throw them in the Q&A down there as well, and we can get to those. So do you have a third reading for us?
I do. This is kind of sums up, the feeling of desperation, of just sheer, like desperation. I think that's the best word of how I felt, so out of control of my life. And yeah. All right, here we go.
Okay.
And you can tell the voice changed from the last one to this one. So, things happened. I'm telling you, read the middle of the book. It's good. Okay, here we go.
It's really good.
I am untouchable, unbreakable, dangerous. I fuck 4 guys, come home, fuck my husband, and make dinner. I sit next to women in church whose husbands I screw. I pray, I give head, I host Bible study, I bang in the woods, I bake cookies. I lie with a smile so unadulterated, my own mother doesn't suspect the evil lurking beneath. And I'm dying. This isn't the life I want. I want to be good. I want to be virtuous. I want to be honest. I want to be whole, but I'm failing. I'm failing at being a wife, a mother, a person. So if I'm not dying, I want to be.
That's really powerful, Lorinda. I can feel that pain inside there. So what did you do to try and fix yourself?
So eventually, when I kind of hit my personal rock bottom, I found a program. I put myself into a rehabilitation program. I thought that I could pray away the gay, or if I couldn't pray it away, somebody else probably could. So I decided to enlist the help of all of the godly people in the conversion therapy group at my church. And I didn't quite get the knack of it the first year, still missing it a little by the second. By the third year, I had real high hopes, but they were dashed. And eventually I was taken aside and told, here, maybe this isn't the right program for you. And then I thought, oh crap, what is? This is it. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel here. This is gay conversion therapy. So I don't know what's left. So that is what I tried to do. I worked the program hard the first and second year. The third year, I started to really suffer.
And so now here you are.
That's right.
So what changed, and how did you move from kind of hiding, if you will, into living a more authentic life?
It wouldn't have been possible without a really, really, really good therapist. And I don't say that lightly. I needed somebody who was connected to the real world in a way that I was not. My childhood left me very vulnerable to the idea that I could just be fixed. If I was just good enough, if I just prayed hard enough, if I just read the Bible enough, that I could fix myself. But that wasn't true. And there was no one to tell me that that wasn't true. Not around me, not in my circle. My therapist, who I ended up seeing just by happenstance, she never once minced words. She told me from the very beginning, Lorinda, the only person who can truly set you free is you. And one day you'll see that. And it took 25 years because I'm a really slow learner sometimes. But she just kept at it with me. And the biggest thing she taught me was to be authentic. And she taught me what authenticity truly was. I was mirroring what I had been taught, but it wasn't who I was. Who I was inside myself, because being authentic means being in sync with who you really are. And I didn't know who that was until we worked at it together. So it was a long, difficult and real soul searching process, and a really patient therapist. And eventually I started to learn that being authentic meant that I could actually be who I wanted to be. I could actually explore the kind of person that I wanted to be, and then I could be that. Like, I just thought that I had to live a life that was perfect in the eyes of God and in the eyes of my faith, whether or not that brought me joy. And her biggest thing was, does this bring you joy? And I had never thought about that before.
So sort of a Marie Kondo of therapists.
Yes, for real. She'd say, does this spark joy? No, but does it have to? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, she was there with us on Thursday night.
She was.
That was very special. see her and to meet her. I had read about her so much over the last few years, reading your story. Oh, she's here tonight too. Hi, Michelle. And I just love her character through the book. I feel like she acts as your perfect like guardian angel and guide through discovering that authentic self. So that's really fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that she sort of sparked the writing process for you, didn't she? Was that how you started writing? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So my initial response to therapy was to just remain mute, which makes it difficult on the therapist. We spent a lot of time gazing at each other in the beginning until she finally said, you know, it would be a good idea if I just gave you this paper and pen and you wrote down how you're feeling, and then we can talk about that. And I was like, genius, because I love to write. So my therapist kept everything I wrote from the first day I went to her. I went to see her when I was in my early 20s, all the way through everything I went through. She kept everything I ever wrote. And then one day I went back in to see her after I had, really started to come into myself. And she said, you're an amazing writer. And what would be really great is if you put this work into a book, because you could help somebody else. And wouldn't that be worth it? You know, nothing can ever erase all the pain that you've been through or all of the things that have happened to you, but you could take this, turn it around and bless someone else. And wouldn't that be, something? And at first I thought, yeah, but I'm not going to write it. But I kept that huge stack of papers next to me for a very long time, and I could feel it pulling at me. And so it was when I met first Nancy Canyon was my first writing instructor, and then Cami Osman, and that just that drew the story out of me. Those pages began to form into a story, and that story eventually became what it is now. So yes.
Well, I feel privileged to have been there at the beginning of that journey. And who would have known, the two of us sitting at Starbucks for those years, writing every Tuesday, that we'd be here interviewing and both have published books. It's just incredible. It's been so much fun watching that whole process grow for you. Do you have any advice for the people out there who might be struggling with living an authentic life, or struggling with that kind of being torn apart in two in their own lives?
What I can say now is that it always seems that living the lie is easier than living the truth, because there's so much fear and unknown surrounding that lie. I found that I feared things that weren't even going to come true. I had a fear that my children would be taken away from me, that my entire family would abandon me, that I would be put up as a laughing stock in front of my entire church. I imagined the absolute worst of everything. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen to people sometimes, because it does. However, I imagined the worst. And what I got was a little bit of the worst, but a whole lot of good. And the way people reacted to me doesn't even hold a candle to how I feel about myself, because I know now that I am living as the person that I was meant to be. And if you aren't living as yourself, that's going to rip you out from the inside. People can bully you from the outside, but when you're ripping yourself apart from the inside, there's no chance of having a whole life, of having an authentic life. So I would just encourage people to just take a look at where they are, and just remember that life goes on whether you choose to live it or not. And you can either live it in fear, you can live it hiding, and it's still going to come out. The truth eventually comes out, and it comes out in really inconvenient and ugly ways sometimes. It's better to embrace that truth and take a chance. And I can say that now because I feel like I've crossed this big hurdle. But I have to tell you, every single person I've ever met who has done the work and come out on the other side as their authentic self is a million times happier and a million times more free. So.
Yeah. I'm going to give you guys a little spoiler alert. everything turns out okay in the end. Because we're here. But right. Lorinda, maybe for those who don't know you personally or who have only ever read your book, tell us a little bit about where you're at now and what your life is like now.
So now I am married to my wife, Sandy Holtzman, and we have actually moved out of Washington, my home state, to Tucson. Nowadays, I live the best life I could have ever, better than I could have imagined. And my coming out actually was a benefit to my children. There was a lot of fear around what was going to happen with my sons. I have 2 sons. And actually what I found was that it helped them. They were questioning, who their own sexuality. They were questioning who they really were. And this became like a free pass for them to just tell me whatever they wanted to tell me, for them to just come out with it and be themselves. And that's, could you give your kids a better gift than just saying, hey, whoever you are, I love you. However you want to live your life, I love you. So my relationship with my sons, I feel has strengthened. I feel like I just have the freedom to just say and be who I want to be. I've become involved in things I never would have been involved in before because I didn't have the courage. It gave me a greater sense of courage. So today I continue to write. I stay in close contact with my writing friends from the Narrative Project. I continue to follow them and I have a writing group. I stay writing. So
what are you writing? What's next?
You. I have an idea. I have a couple different things. I have a book that I've been playing with for a long time about my experiences as a gym manager. It sounds like that might be boring, but trust me, it's not. I've seen some stuff. Also, I have another one I've been working on a bit that I'm not ready to talk about yet. But so there's a couple things in the works.
Good. Well, good. I'm glad there's a couple things in the works because your writing is lovely, and I so look forward to you coming to writing group every week and working on that together. And I'm joining the Narrative Project again next year, just saying, for my next book. So, if you want to join up again, we can meet. We're writing buddies again.
Yes, as long as we're guaranteed to be writing buddies again, then.
Yeah. So how do you think it'll change your writing process? How do you think it will have changed from the memoir to, now moving forward in your writing? Do you think that you've gained a lot of perspective on the writing process, or how has that helped you? How has writing your memoir helped you in your future writing endeavors?
Absolutely. I think that, well, for a couple different things, the process of writing couldn't have been laid out better than it was in the Narrative Project. I highly recommend anyone who wants to write anything, whether it's your memoir or it's not, or fiction, whatever, get into a writing group. And if you don't have one that you're already in, Cami Osman's The Narrative Project is amazing. The support, you learn everything from step 1, how to write down your rough draft or your shitty first draft, as we call it, how to work through all of those things that you doubt. You have this inner critic telling you, oh, you can't say that. Oh, you shouldn't write that. All of that gets taken care of in the Narrative Project because you learn how to silence your inner critic. You learn how to write from your heart, to write from the spots where your authenticity comes from. We all can write a story about our lives, but is it the real story? And Cami gets you down to the real story because she'll ask you over and over, is that real? Come on, tell me the juicy stuff. What really happened? And then you say it and she's like, write that. I think that having gone through the program and having written the memoir, I already have an idea now in my head of how to organize the writing in such a way that it's manageable. And I think that's what's important. People will sit down to write, and it's like, this is overwhelming. How can I do this? But this just gives you that plan. And so I feel from here on out, I've already got imprinted in my mind that map of how to write the story, how to have all the parts in there that make a good story. So that I feel that this first book has set me up, not that it will be easy as pie from here on out, but that I have a really good roadmap to follow.
Well, I'm excited for anything you produce next. One thing I didn't know going into your talk the other night is how funny you are. You're really funny. So I hope that you write the gym manager book, because I've heard some of those stories and I think it will be hilarious. I can't wait to see it.
Well, thank you.
And it was really fun to watch you signing all those copies of your book at Village Books the other night. So just a reminder for anyone who doesn't have it, Lorinda signed a bunch of copies at Village Books. So they have signed copies in-house, and we can confirm this with Claire, but I believe that they can mail them at least anywhere in the US. I don't know where else they can mail them, but anywhere in the US, I believe. And then I don't see any questions. Really, no one has any questions? I'm watching. I don't see anything. So jump in there if you have questions for Lorinda. We are loving this. Congratulations. Oh. There's tons of love, and everyone wants to hear the gym manager stories.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good, because I got some in my collection.
Good.
For sure.
Good. All right. Well, Claire, I don't see any questions coming up.
Well, I have questions. Somebody else have questions.
I'm glad you have questions. Perfect.
Well, so I do have questions for Lorinda, but actually I also have questions for you, Lisa, because I am curious to know about what you're working on next.
I am actually working on two things. I have a book of fiction that I'm writing, which was the story that I always thought would be my first book. It's the story that has been living in my head for 25 years. When I first heard it from somebody, I thought, oh my God, that would make an amazing book. And so it's been ruminating in my head forever. And really, I thought it was the first book I'd write. I took classes, I wrote sketches, I turned it in, and my professor said, oh, you should write this book. This would be a good book. And then, life happens. Yeah. So I am now working on that one. And that's the one I'm going to do in the narrative project next year. And I'm also working on a cookbook that's just about soup. Just soup.
Oh, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and it's all
to cook soup.
It's soups and all the things that go along with soup. Because my theory is that, it used to be really special to go out for dinner, but now it's like more special if you can make a homemade meal for people. It's become so easy to just, grab fast food or whatever. I think it's really special if you can whip something up, and soup is really, you can make it really comforting. You can make it fancy. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. So. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm
so
looking forward to
soup and the stories that go along with it.
Oh, there's Molly.
There's Molly.
So Lorinda, I do want to ask, how scary was it for you handing over the book for your family to read? And how have many of them read your book?
So my oldest son has read the book, and in fact today he said to me, Mom, you are an incredible writer, and I loved reading the book, and it gave me some really good insights. He's a very he's a very creative boy. He spends a lot of time reading and writing and writing music, and he just said, it just made me feel like I know you as a person, not just my mom. And so that was really cool. My ex-in-laws actually have read the book. They were one of the first couples to buy it. And I went to visit them in person, and we had a lot of hugs and tears, and just, they're very close to me. I'm very close to them. They're very much a support. My own family, it's both. My sister has been amazing. My cousin that I'm super close to, a bunch of other, cousins or whatnot. My parents were a different thing. I had a lot of fear. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I felt that my story was something that should get out there, just because, you know, it's an important thing, but I also didn't want to hurt my family. I feel like I was honest with them from the very beginning about what I was going to write. I've spoken to them all the way through. I've told them they don't have to read it. They don't have to attend anything, but I just wanted them to know that it was out there. All that to say, I was terrified. I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I imagined the absolute worst. And as per usual, it was better than I thought it would be. My mother told me that she was very proud that that I set out to write the book and that I did it. She may never read it, but that's okay.
Yeah. And didn't you say the other night that you have like 56 cousins?
I have 56 first cousins on my dad's side and 9 on my mother's. So like I was saying the other night, you can always find someone in your corner, really, when you have that many first cousins. So it's not all, you know, it's not all bad. I can always find someone.
Yeah. I always wonder that with memoirs, you know, just how present that is in your mind as you're writing it, like thinking about how it's going to be received, and how hard it must be to kind of set that aside and say, I need to write my truth, and I can't I can't change it so that it will be more palatable for people.
Well, I think if I had come to that realization, or if I'd been able to do that sooner, the book may not have taken 7 years. But I think that is something that you have to work through if you're going to write a memoir that is that, you know, revealing and personal, as most memoirs are. You have to decide, am I going to write, this is how Cammie always put it, are you going to write the truth, or are you going to write the truth? You know, I mean, you can write the truth and it's all right. It's a sell. She used to say to me, well, this is sellable, but and I was mad. What about the juicy stuff? Why don't you tell me the truth? So, you know, if you can come to terms with that, then I think that you have a good book on your hands. Everybody likes to read the honest stuff. They connect with that. I mean, anyone can say, oh, it was a bummer, but it turned out all right. I mean, who cares? You want to know, like, how did it affect you? I want to know it and really know. So.
Right. And if you're in that writing process too, I mean, you don't have to necessarily publish it. If you're writing for healing and writing to really as a form of kind of, you know, self-healing, just write it. Yeah. No one says you have to publish it. Just write it all down there and get it all out. And I know, at least for me too, that provided me with some sense of healing, and or at least understanding of what had happened in my life. You know, you don't always understand it in that moment when it's happening to you, but by going back and examining that, you can kind of gain a better perspective on it. So just write it, and you can always cut it out later.
You do learn, I think, as the writing process goes on, that writing actually makes you stronger when you go, as you're so you're writing your story, you're really connected to it. There's probably a lot of like stress and tears and all this stuff, but the longer you write it, the more perspective you gain on it. You start to see the story, as the beginning, the middle, and the end. And it's not quite as hard to put those things in there. I'm not saying it's still not terrifying to hand it over, because you know, once it's out of your hands, it's out of your hands. It's not like you can run through the store with a blackout marker and like, oops, I didn't mean to say that, take it out.
Right.
It's out there. But you do learn to see it differently. And it was a real growing up process for me, I think. Don't you, Lise?
Yeah, absolutely. You have a question here. Did you write mostly on paper, or did you use the computer?
I started on paper in journals, and in Michelle Beller's therapy, it was all on paper for the most part. I did switch to the laptop later. It became easier for me to write on there, just, you know, the ease of editing and all of that. It just made it so much easier. But the initial story came out on paper, I would say. Yeah.
How about you, Lisa?
It's all in the computer. Yeah. I do. I actually am a little bit of a freak when it comes to that, because I label everything. And so I actually write all my scenes down and label them, so then I can move things around. And Yeah, it's a little crazy making.
I am in awe of when I encounter authors who still write their entire books longhand. And
well, that'll never happen again. Let me tell you, I was no way, no way, not now. Lisa's taught me how to hit enter and shift and all that since we started. So I'm not. Yeah, it's good.
I was amazed.
I got up with you because I would say, Lisa, how do you do that? And she'd say, do what? And then she'd lean over. She'd say, really? And then she'd show me. And I'd be like, oh, wow, look at that. I mean, you could have picked the least technical person and put him with the most technical person. So it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. You know,
somebody raised their hand, but I don't, if you just throw your question in the chat and then we can see it. Whoever that was that raised their hand.
Oh yeah, I can't. Oh, it's Jean Scott. Jean Scott raised her hand.
Okay, Jean, if you have a question, throw it in the chat or the Q&A and then we can see it.
You know, Kristen Hanna, the author, whose novels, none of them are under, 500 pages, 600 pages. Her entire novels are longhand. And her most recent one, she had written the entire thing and then realized, no, this isn't supposed to be about this main character. This is supposed to be about this person who's been a secondary character the whole time. So a year's worth of work, several hundred pages. She was like, nope, start over, which just blows
I know.
my mind.
Heard that interview too, and I was like, what? You write it all out and then you just she threw out the whole thing and like started over with this next character. And I was like, oh my gosh, longhand.
Yeah. So Jean's question is, did all the cookies get eaten?
Almost. We only got a couple left. Jean Scott used to own a cookie company called Great Scott Cookies. I'm really sorry to tell you that it is no longer in business, because if it were, she would be bought out of cookies all the time. She is a wonderful, wonderful cookie maker, and she was kind enough to make me some cookies when I came to visit. So
very nice.
They're nearly gone.
Maybe you should write a cookie cookbook.
Maybe. I don't know. The cookbooks are your area, I think.
Well, I am putting in the chat the link to the Village Books website, where folks can pick up on that page. We have Straight Enough as well as Square Up by Lisa Dailey, and I highly recommend Square Up. In fact, Lisa, I'm warning you now. I just have been tallying the votes for my book group, and it looks like Square Up has been voted in the lineup for 2022. So I'll be in touch with you about that. Can I ask you, Lorinda, really quickly about this photo? This is a gorgeous photo. Who took that photo? Like, where is that?
Well, it looks like many, many places I have run to right around here in Bellingham. However, that particular picture came from my beautiful publisher down there. She found.
Yeah, it's actually stock photo. It's a Getty Images photo.
It's beautiful.
We searched far and wide for it, but we found that one really kind of fit everything in the book. And I mean, from behind really actually looks like Lorinda. So
yes, it does.
It was sort of a perfect match for her.
And it looks like Washington. I mean, it looks like she's apart from some of the details down below, it looks like it could almost be Oyster Dome or someplace up on Baker.
Exactly.
So.
And I have my picture on Oyster Dome at the back of me like that. So many pictures of it. And when we saw that one, Lisa was like, we both were just like, oh my gosh. So
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Wow. Well, okay, this is the last call for questions. Do you ladies have any last comments or questions for each other?
I just want to thank Lisa for all of her hard work. If anyone is interested in writing their book, I mean, definitely look up the Narrative Project. And then also Lisa owns Sidekick Press, and she also owns Silent Sidekick, both of which I've used. And Lisa is a tremendous human who will help you all the way through. I've never once felt like I was going through this book process by myself. You've always been there for me. You're a huge support. Not only are you my friend, but you're just a great support. You just know how to run a good business. And I'm really proud of you because a lot of that has happened since we've become friends. You are a go-getter, girl. Anything you want to do, you can do. And the same for Cami and the Narrative Project. I mean, I've never met two women like Lisa and Cami who are so motivated, and they just make dreams come true. So thank you so much to you and to Cami and to you, Claire. I mean, I've imagined reading my book at Village Books for so long. And when I found out that I was going to get to do that, I mean, I'm still in heaven. I still can't believe it's happened. So thank you so much.
I know. I want to give a huge shout out to Village Books too, because I mean, as a publisher in town, Village Books provides such a great support for authors, and especially for local authors. And all I have to do is send an email and say, hey, I've got some local authors with new books out, and they're like, great, we'll put them in the store. And it's just been such a great support. I've loved that partnership. So thank you, Claire, and thank you for getting all this set up. And I'm so happy, Lorinda, that you got to do a live event. That's so very exciting. I'm so proud of you for finishing it off. And I can't wait to just keep working with you and see what comes next.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed working with both of you for both of these events. This was special. Lorinda, you're the first to have a dog at the table with you for your signing. And you are the first to have an in-person event and a virtual event. So you're kind of like breaking the mold here.
Deal, how do you want to say?
On all. And Catherine says, thank you all so much for letting those that could not physically attend be here with you all. So that was a benefit for sure to this particular platform. So so thank you both very much. And we do have autographed copies of, I believe, both of your books. I think, Lisa, I believe the copies that we have are signed of Square Up. If they're not, I'll be calling you and asking you to come in to sign them, please.
Okay.
All right. Okay, well, I think with that, we get to say good night and safe travels back home, Lorinda.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.